Let me tell you a story about the most wonderful time of the year. It's nearly midnight on a summer's eve in Brisbane, somewhere, somehow, I don't know, the night before Christmas in Brisbane is always moist. My elder brother and I are loudly dinging the bells on our brand new, super shiny BMX bikes as we ride them sans helmet down our street. The Nintendo Wii of 1982, these freedom machines had been delivered with a wink by our parents because, look, as I am now, a very mature 8-year-old, I know, of course, Santa does not exist, but I don't care whatsoever because this is the one night of the year that all the teasing and the mockery that I get at my school finally pays off. Every brutal insult based upon the umlauts in my last name or the smell when I open my lunchbox is about to be vindicated. My lunchbox has a particular pong which can only arrive when said lunchbox is packed with the stinky cheeses and smoked meats from my parents' home country. And when you leave it in a school bag in the stinking Queensland sun, when that bell rings and the lid comes off, who took a shit in your lunchbox, Günsberg? Yeah, laugh it up, Skippy. Because come Christmas Eve, I know that my Eurocentric nature, which you find such amusement in, will pay off when, according to tradition, I will get my presents on Christmas Eve a whole 10 hours before you motherfucker. The rain from the afternoon thunderstorm evaporates off the still warm tarmac. My brother and I, giggling and dinging our bells so much, our similarly aged neighbours from across the street come charging out in their summer pyjamas to investigate the ruckus. The cruel design team at Best and Less never really thought to put a fly on the button on the fly of those summer pyjamas. The young man in the front row is nodding because he knows the pain. Because it's not uncommon for a prepubescent penis to come dangling out as you walk over for breakfast. Your mum never missing a moment to drop the line, "Good morning," and "Good morning to you, morning glory." Yeah, thanks, mum. Yeah, you're 7. Like, thanks. Thankfully, there were no trouser snakes staring back at us that night. Just 3 kids in stunned silence with a look of envy, just delicious to drink in. The only sound piercing that silence, the dinging bells calling into the thick night air. Suck shit, dickheads! Getting older, Christmas meant less about presents and then more about cricket. Then less about cricket, more about booze, and then just all about booze. Moving away to Sydney as a single man, I get pretty cynical about the whole thing, and I start to resent Mariah's early release from her cryo chamber the day after Halloween. I knew I'd gone too far with my Grinchiness the day that I answered the question of the young Filipino lady who'd been trained to ask me that question working at the local IGA. "Oh, and how are you?" And I answered her with, "Terrible, these carols are really oppressive. What if I don't celebrate Christmas? This is really over the top." And she looked at me with sadness, with enormous pity, and she says, "Oh, I will pray for you." I got my wish one year. I woke up on December 25th to the sound of heavy traffic and jackhammers working on the building site next door to the hotel I was staying at in Tel Aviv. I was most confused. I mean, Jesus was Jewish. Surely there was some nod here to the King of the Jews? Apparently not. After much exploration, the only place I actually found Christmas decorations was way up in Nazareth, where apparently Jesus was from. However, 2 things were really incongruent with what I'd been led to believe. For hundreds and hundreds of years, Nazareth is a village with a population of Christian Arabs. So all of the Christmas decorations there were in Arabic. And secondly, the Jesus that I had seen on the picture of every wall of every classroom that I'd ever been in for my entire life was a significantly lesser shade of brown than any of the people that I saw here, whose lineage goes back hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of years. On my further adventures in this most complicated of countries, I discovered a few other anomalies about the stories I've been raised on, including that the very first mention of the man whose birthday the presents are all for was written by a bloke called Paul 25 years after this guy died. Jesus, that guy is. And of course, Jesus, a man this guy Paul had never actually met. And then there was the magnificent tale of Jesus' foreskin. You see, being a good Jewish boy, on the 8th day after he was away in a manger with no crib for a bed, Jesus was circumcised. However, when he ascended to heaven, this was the only part of his body that didn't get a ticket through the pearly gates. Thus was born the religious relic, the holy prepuce. And at one stage, no less, this is true, no less than 18 separate churches across Europe claimed to have this most sacred slice of their saviour as a handy lure to encourage that big fat pilgrim dollar. Until the 17th century, all that malarkey was put to rest when the Vatican Library posed that when the big guy ascended, so too did the holy prepuce. And that, Mr. Galileo, with your fancy new telescope, that is what you see when you look up at Saturn and you see a ring around it. Sir, you are actually seeing the ascended into heaven foreskin of Jesus. Our book is the only book, your book is banned. That is also true. People are allowed to believe whatever they want to believe, but all this really pulled the rug out from under me. Like, what am I supposed to do with this entire month of my year? Not engage at all? Like so many Christmas movies you claim to have never ever watched until you're on a plane and are crying, I too had somebody save Christmas for me. It's the end of 2015, and I've been with my girlfriend Audrey for a little over a year. Back in Australia for some work over the summer, I'm staying with her and her now 11-year-old daughter Georgia in their apartment. It's a weekend not long before the school year ends, and G says, let's put up the Christmas tree. It had been nearly 20 years since I'd done anything remotely like this. So Audrey went down to the garage, brought up the clip-top Bunnings boxes containing the tree and all the tinsel and the baubles and the lights. And like any long-standing family tradition, what happened next required no interaction, no direction. Audrey and G moving as if they've rehearsed the entire thing. From the cupboard in her room, G retrieves a perfectly crisp, fluffy red and white elf hat. She dons it immediately, and Audrey plugged in the aux cord into her phone to initiate the startup sequence, which would wake Mariah from her deep space hypersleep. The same song which flooded my body with cynical rivers of derision only a few years prior started to change meaning for me, quicker than Ms. Carey could unnecessarily sing every note of her 5-octave vocal range on the way to an actual melody. Before she could write her list and send it off to St. Nick, Georgia and I were dancing around the living room. The twirls and kicks of my 11-year-old dance kid are hard to keep up with, but I mask my inability to move in a coordinated fashion by combining Gumby pirouettes with throwing tinsel on the tree and hanging baubles like I was a lowly paid extra in a soft focus karaoke video. By the time we'd hit the fade on the final chorus, the tree was decorated in spectacular fashion. We were both breathless from dancing and Audrey breathless with laughter. A few weeks later, I'm back in my apartment in Venice Beach thinking about these two wonderful humans and exactly what the fuck it is I'm doing with my life. I'd moved to America 10 years before to play for the grand prize, hosting primetime network television, a feat that I had proudly accomplished. However, the expected torrent of dollars and work offers never actually arrive, and the industry begins to shift beneath me. I lose a live hosting gig to Mario Lopez, who until then had been an actor in Saved by the Bell. Then I lose a reality competition show to a wrestler, John Cena. I mean, you can't even see him. Thank you. I quickly pivot to pitching TV formats to the very same people I had recently been auditioning for. This was really interesting, but much like Broadway, you can't make a living, but you can make a killing. Everything's on spec until you get a green light, and if you get picked up by other territories, well then it's money time, baby. So I'm surprised when I realised that this is something I actually no longer want. Out on a bicycle trip in the mountains one day, where all of my good ideas show up, I have a realisation. I moved to America to chase the dream of a 29-year-old version of me. But 42-year-old me didn't want that dream anymore. What I wanted was the breathless feeling of joy dancing around the living room with G, just making Audrey laugh. Somewhere between a mountain in Malibu and my apartment by the beach, I realised what I wanted out of life had changed. I made up my mind there and then to give back my green card and move back to Australia. There was nothing the TV industry could offer me that was as good as what life with these two was like. Now, this is a time of year which for me has nothing to do with the Jewish son of a chippy who gets born on the same day every year, yet curiously dies on a different day every year. This is a time of year to celebrate the relationships which matter to me in my life, to ride a bicycle through the streets with my son, dinging my bell, and dance around the room to Mariah like the unco stepdad that I am. Audrey and George's delight now replaced with something even more magical. Their eye-rolling and groans are, as far as I'm concerned, the most delicious Christmas food of all.